You are listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 8th of August 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing, in association with Addis. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's programme, Israel's cabinet approves the reoccupation of Gaza City and everyone waits for the US reaction. From there to the scientific community's response to a pullback of US funding for vaccines, and then
the fear of war is in every Taiwanese heart, but there is no any drama or any film talks about it.
The showrunner of Zero Day Attack, the drama about China's invasion that's been making waves across Taiwan. And after that, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, you will have more from the world of film.
Absolutely, Chris. I'll give you a roundup of this year's international summer box office.
Thank you, Fernando. We'll also have the latest from our summer series this week focused on the world of luxury. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. The Israeli cabinet's decision to back a takeover of Gaza City, paving the way for the full reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, has been making its way around the world this morning. Turkey's foreign ministry has urged the international community to step in. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is among those who called the decision wrong and one that would only lead to more bloodshed. As ever, the only reaction that really matters would be that of the United States, and officials there have been largely muted so far, saying the decision was Israel's and Israel's alone. Well, Julie Norman is lecturer in politics and international relations at UCL, also senior associate fellow on the Middle East at RUSI. And Julie, you're just back from the Middle East, so let's start there with kind of the mood and whether there was an expectation that this decision was coming.
Well, good afternoon, Chris. Yeah, I've been in the region for the last month speaking with a lot of Palestinians and Israelis. And I would say, unfortunately, that there really was this sense of cynicism, of desperation, and just real depression as these realities continue to sink in. You know, the Israeli government has been speaking about different types of options for Gaza, ranging from annexation to population transfers to reoccupation. And so I don't think, sadly, this announcement came as too much of a surprise to many people in the region, even as it's extremely disappointing and just disheartening doesn't even begin to describe, I think, the feelings on the ground. And that's for many Israelis as well as for Palestinians.
Julie, when you described that cynicism, the cynicism was there despite the fact that there had been ceasefire talks ongoing, albeit they, of course, have not gone anywhere. Is there any credence in your mind to the idea that this is some sort of bluff from Israel to secure better terms for a ceasefire? Could Netanyahu even pull that off, a sort of 180 after announcing a decision like this?
I think it would be really difficult, Chris. And, I asked people on the ground that very directly, is this just rhetoric? And what I heard is just, by this point in this war, we should be taking what Netanyahu says very seriously. Every time there's been a threat of something that might happen unless Hamas comes back to the table, that policy goes into full effect and then some. And so I think people are preparing for this to take root. And I think we've seen this from the other comments that Netanyahu has made and that the cabinet signed onto yesterday as well, which includes in it complete Israeli security control over the Strip, which would suggest that these types of operations will happen and that it's something that, much of the government is behind, not just Netanyahu.
Julie, when it comes to sort of what will happen now on the ground, I mean, you mentioned full security control. Israel's military has effectively had control over much of the Gaza Strip, even at this point. How will a decision like this affect the situation on the ground?
Well, that's right, Chris. I mean, the Israeli military already controls over 85% of Gaza that are either evacuation zones or full military control. What the announcement from this morning suggests is that Israel will start moving into one of what are essentially three remaining small areas where the IDF is not currently present. The first of those is Gaza City. It's the northernmost point. It's the main urban center for Gaza, and what's often thought to be where Hamas's most of their capabilities, if there are any left, still reside. And from Israel's point of view, where at least some of the hostages may still be being held. So we'll see this incursion into Gaza City. I would note that this is not the first time this has happened. Gaza City was one of the first areas to be attacked when the war began, and there have been numerous waves going back into Gaza City to try and stamp out Hamas operatives as they have resumed there and to maintain control. So this won't be new to Gazans there, but people who have tried to go back there will likely be yet again pushed out. And again, I would just say this is not only the first or second, but for many people, the 10th, 11th, or 12th time they have been displaced.
Julie, when it comes to the international reaction, all eyes are typically on the U.S. as the one that could have some kind of impact here. Donald Trump has reportedly had some pretty fiery phone calls with Netanyahu in the past month or so, particularly about the humanitarian situation, but he doesn't look to be as concerned about this aspect of it.
That's right. We've heard some frustration from Trump, the sense of just end the war, but not really changing anything policy-wise. So while he has had some words with Netanyahu, at the end of the day, he's pretty much given a green light to Israel to, as he says it, kind of do what they want. They're going to make the decision. Someone on the ground in Israel phrased it to me as, for Trump, Gaza is kind of like a mosquito flying around in Mar-a-Lago that he keeps kind of swatting at, but isn't really putting in the attention or the time to really engage with it, to even, put any kind of pressure on Israel, much less really try and resolve the situation. So my guess is that the response from the White House will be pretty muted at best, if not somewhat endorsing. And we shouldn't forget that Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, was in the Middle East just a week ago. So it's assumed that some of these plans were likely discussed with him at that time.
Just to follow up on that, Julie, I mean, is that surprising? Could Donald Trump really tolerate many more months of war as this would probably lead to?
I mean, I think we've all thought that many times before in terms of what the U.S. will kind of abide by here. And again, I think there will be some internal pressure, but for Trump, unless he really sees this as an issue front and foremost for him, for the U.S. interests involved, my sense is he's not going to stick out his neck too far to counter Netanyahu too much. With all that said, Chris, as well as I do, that Trump is very unpredictable on many of these conflicts. He is not immune to these 180s. And so there's some possibility for that. But I think with Israel, it's unlikely for a big shift in policy to come from Trump in these upcoming weeks and months when it would need to happen.
And just finally, Julie, when it comes to the rest of the international reaction, is there anything different you expect there, either from the European Union or Arab nations? I mean, we've seen, I suppose, the usual statements so far, but maybe a bit of resignation rather than a new level of concrete opposition.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting moment for the rest of the international community, I would say, Chris, because we have this very slow but yet building momentum, not only from internationals, including the UK, but also from regional actors from many Middle East countries, also calling for an end to this, including for Hamas to disarm, from Arab League countries saying that. So some very different kinds of messages that have come out in the last couple of weeks. But in terms of the real pressure that either regional partners or international partners can put on the parties, in Gaza, it's still pretty limited, except for the U.S. And I think everyone's very aware of that. But that doesn't mean that they will stop looking for other ways to have some impact. And I do think the UK's recognition of Palestine, if they move forward with that, puts on an onus to address these kinds of moves with more forcefulness than they have in the past.
Thank you very much, Julie. That was Julie Norman, lecturer in politics and international relations at UCL, also of RUSI. And now here's Tom Webb with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. The United States has doubled its reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The reward money of $50 million has been set after the U.S. has accused the Venezuelan leader of being one of the world's leading narco-traffickers and working with cartels to flood the U.S. with fentanyl-laced cocaine. France's largest fire this summer has been contained. 1 person has died and 13 were injured, with 2,000 firefighters battling the blaze in the south of the country since Tuesday. Local authorities have urged continued vigilance throughout the weekend, with temperatures expected to exceed 30 degrees Celsius. Taiwan's first durian festival is about to make its debut at the Love River in Kaohsiung. There will be 40 stores promoting limited edition durian products, including frozen butter and spicy noodle variations. The durian's unique aroma has earned its reputation as the king of fruits, or stinky fruit, which is banned on most public transport. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Tom. Good call on the public transport thing. The Taiwanese drama series Zero Day Attack that depicts Beijing's invasion of Taiwan was released in Taiwanese televisions over the last weekend, and it's caused waves not only in Taiwan but around the world. Starting with its release in Japan on Amazon Prime Video next week, it's expanding to Indonesia and other countries as well. Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi attended a screening in Tokyo and spoke with Shin-Mei Cheng, the showrunner of Zero Day Attack.
My name is Shin-Mei Cheng, and I have been a journalist for 16 years. And after that, I switched to being a screenwriter. And I think every creative's works and must be touch the people's heart. That's why I decided to write the war between Taiwan and China, because we have been treated by Chinese government for over 16 years, and the fear of war is in every Taiwanese heart, but there is no any drama or any film talks about it. I feel that's weird. I think it's a kind of responsibility to talk about the story like that.
Thank you. I feel this drama series has heavy themes, but I think it's very easy to watch and entertaining for me at the same time. So could you briefly tell us what Zero Day Attack drama series is about for our listeners?
Okay, this is very special structure dramas. We got 10 episodes. Each episode has a different story and different topic and direct by different director. Each aspect we discuss the different Taiwan society. Like first one is politics, and the second one is the young generation, and the third one is media. And we even talk about the family, the father who works in China, struggling, and when the war is coming, which side he should be stand. And the last episode, we talks about what happened in the army. If in the army they got two different ideology, two different beliefs. So if the war will come in, and the soldiers and the general, what will they choose?
I think this series focuses mainly on, let's say, the war before the war without weapons. Why did you want to focus on this theme?
Because I was a journalist, and for a long time, I got a friend who worked for a very big television news channel in Taiwan. He is quite high level. Actually, he controls all the news department. But he told me there is one small department he couldn't get involved because that department was directly listened to the China government. So they take the order from China and decide what kind of news Taiwanese people should be heard or should be watched. And that scares me. That's the start. And I started to research other aspects in Taiwan, and I find out it's everywhere. It's not only in media, it's also in religion, in election, in politics. So it's a modern world. And the war has been already around our daily lives, and we have to be aware of that.
Thank you. This has already been on TV in Taiwan. So what do you think about the reaction in Taiwan?
I have learned lots of people love it, and lots of people hate it, and they're arguing about that. But I think that's a good start. This drama opened the gate to make people who has different ideology, they can start to talk, even it's not happy with that. But I think that's all the good things, and good work should touch people's heart. It's not only happy feelings, maybe the angry feeling, that's all kind of feeling.
And then this is going to be shown worldwide, including Japan. What impact do you hope Zero-Day Attack will have for the world?
Now it's broadcast in Taiwan and will be broadcast in Japan, 5th of August. Near the future, it will be North American and European as well, and we are still in negotiation that. I hope the audience worldwide would recognize the modern world is not a real bomb. The modern world is by the fake news, by internet, or the dangerous in the chips. So we have to be aware of that. As long as we know the coming dangers of our daily life now, and we can stop it.
Thank you. So finally, I think this was a really big production project. I'm sure there was some difficulties you experienced. Could you tell us about the challenges during the production of Zero-Day Attack?
Almost 3 years. Every step is difficult. And the first step is easy to find lots of directors to join me because they are crazy like me. But the second step to find funding is difficult because lots of funding, they are scaring about China because they got some business in China. So they refuse me. They think this story is interesting and this topic is so important, but we can't invest you because we have business in China. In the end, I find Robert Cao, who is a very famous businessman in Taiwan. When he decides investors and everything's get easier, then the shooting is difficult, find the actor or actress is difficult. Every day is so difficult. On the other hand, lots of people join me and trust me, and we got the same belief that we can make this drama to become true.
Shin-Mei Cheng there speaking with Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Turmack. In the world of health, newly developed mRNA vaccines became famous in the aftermath of the pandemic, avoiding millions more deaths from COVID, earning a Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2023, and giving scientists a general boost as these vaccines can be easily adapted to respond to future viruses and pandemics. At least that's the official scientific version. Skeptics of vaccines include the current U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who once called COVID shots the deadliest vaccine ever made, and this week cut $500 million in funding for further mRNA vaccine research. Among the many ironies of this latest move is that the initial vaccine rollouts were trumpeted by Donald Trump himself. Well, Jamie Yassif is Vice President of Global Biological Policy and Programs at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. Jamie, thanks very much for coming on the show. This would not necessarily be a problem, I suppose, if it were just about COVID, which is mostly, at least in the past at this point. But tell us about mRNA vaccines in general and the role that they're playing today.
Thanks so much for having me. Yes, this is this cut to mRNA vaccine developed by HHS is a grave mistake, and it's going to put millions of lives at risk. As you've already said, the rapid deployment of a mRNA vaccine during COVID saved millions of lives, and it would have been much worse in terms of life lost and economic damage and political instability if we hadn't had that resource available to us. But it's really important for future-proofing our defenses going forward. mRNA vaccines are a vital technology platform for developing new vaccines in response to novel infectious disease threats that we face. We know that there are both growing risks of epidemics and pandemics from naturally emerging infectious disease outbreaks. We're still dealing with risks posed by H5N1 bird flu, for example, and there are other infectious disease risks on the horizon. And we also know that the risks of deliberate misuse of bioscience and biotechnology by malicious actors is also a risk we face. And we need to be prepared for both those futures, and we need to be ready for the for surprise. And mRNA vaccines are a vital tool for that. They're one of the most promising technologies that we have to rapidly develop a new vaccine in the face of a new pandemic threat. And cutting off support for this is a grave mistake. And I think the scientific community is right to be up in arms about it.
Jamie, when it comes to the development of something like the mRNA vaccine, obviously there is funding that will come from the private sector as well. Pharmaceutical companies were very involved during the pandemic. But how much does the scientific community and the R&D community rely on federal funding for something like this?
The scientific community and the private sector rely very heavily on federal funding. So, we're seeing possibly as much as $500 million in cuts or resources affected by money that's been distributed by the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. That's a part of the U.S. government under HHS that's responsible for supporting development of vaccines and other medical countermeasures. Certainly, there is private sector support for this. But the U.S. government has been and continues to be a critical player in funding basic and applied research in the life sciences that's important for fundamental advances and also for public health. The private sector will continue to invest in this, but without the support from the U.S. government and a guaranteed customer, the financial incentives are just a lot weaker, and this could really unravel. So this is a significant problem. The private sector cannot soldier on without the U.S. government supporting this work.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, is that part of the issue that, say, the private sector will focus on things that are happening now and will respond when, say, there is a pandemic, but it is the government that will, have funding at the ready, normally at least, to prepare for future crises?
So I think there are two considerations. And one is the point you just made about preparing for future crises. In order to have the capabilities tomorrow to protect us against the next pandemic, we need to be investing today. So these technologies still need research and development to get ready. And in fact, the reason we were able to respond so quickly to COVID is because of years of effort, basic and applied research on vaccine development platforms generally and on COVID specifically. If we hadn't made those investments in advance, the outcomes would have been much worse. And we are putting millions of lives at risk by not preparing for the next pandemic. I think it's very likely that we will see another event on the scale of COVID or potentially worse in our lifetimes, and the risks of that are growing over time. In terms of the private sector and their incentives, so the private sector will respond to a demand signal by the U.S. government, including investment in basic R&D and also signaling that they will buy their products in the future. If those demand signals disappear, the private sector will make rational calculations to invest in R&D on areas where there's a strong market that includes things like cancer research and other areas. So the government investment and their commitment going forward is going to play a major role in what the private sector chooses to spend its time and money on.
Jamie, just finally, could you broaden this out a little to the international side of things? I wonder what impact it may have there. Not only this cut in funding, but also, for that matter, RFK Jr. has cut funding to Gavi, the International Vaccine Agency. How much of an impact does all that have on vaccine research around the world?
I mean, this is likely to have, this will have if it goes forward and the U.S. government doesn't reverse this ill-considered decision, it's likely to have a devastating impact domestically and globally. This is definitely part of a broader push by Secretary Kennedy Jr. to sow vaccine skepticism. And it's part of a broader set of cuts that the U.S. government has made in this administration to biosecurity and global public health. It includes notifying the WHO of our intent to withdraw. It includes dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is a critical part of U.S. assistance abroad for public health. And dramatic staffing cuts to the Department of Health and Human Services and CDC broadly. So this will have dramatic impacts domestically and will put American lives at risk and our economy at risk. And it will have major shockwaves overseas. The United States government has been a major leader for years on advancing research and development for medical countermeasures. And by weakening our investment in these areas, it's going to have global impacts, including on lower middle income countries that don't have as much resources as the global north does and that are going to be especially vulnerable in the event of another outbreak or a pandemic. This is a scientifically unsound decision that we're making. It's an abdication of U.S. leadership on the global stage. And it's not morally defensible. And I would admonish the administration to reverse course on this regrettable decision.
Jamie Yassif, Vice President of Global Biological Policy and Programs at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. Thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Now to news from the world of film, because it is the summer and that means big box office hopes for studios the world over. We wanted to go over a few of the latest trends emerging this summer, and for that we are joined by Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Monocle's senior correspondent. Fernando, you are putting away your music hat of yesterday and putting on your film hat for today.
Absolutely, Chris. And I love following the box office numbers. That's my nerdy side. Since I was a kid in the 90s, I love it. I always look at the lists, what films are doing well. I like trends in the world of cinema.
The box office numbers. Well, we're going to get into that and some of the trends. And one trend it is when it comes to the box office, there's more superhero films out at the moment. But a trend that you've identified perhaps is that domestically, these films are doing well at the moment, not as much internationally.
Absolutely. I think Hollywood shouldn't take the rest of the world outside the US for granted. Like in the 2010s, it was, okay, I'm not going to exaggerate, but it was quite easy for, any kind of superhero film to do more than $1 billion in the box office. Now, you can still reach $1 billion, like Lilo and Stitch from Disney did manage, the only film in the summer so far to reach that number, but it is a little bit harder. Of course, there's some talk, Chris, that this could be anti-American, feeling around the world, especially in the case of Superman, which is not necessarily a flop. We have to be very clear here. It hasn't been a flop. It's doing very well in the US. In the rest of the world, it's kind of muted, I have to say. But I disagree. There is a little bit of anti-Americanism, for sure, but I think there are more local productions. I think it means that in China we have an industry, in India we have an industry, and in other countries that I'll talk to you about it as well. So it's not necessarily a rejection of Hollywood, it's just praising your own product as well.
Well, to be honest, I personally was not much of a fan of Superman, but I seem to be going against the grain there. But nonetheless, as you say, internationally it was not that popular, although something like Jurassic Park was doing very well, Lilo and Stitch, as you say. So there is a potential. What do you think is sort of the difference?
You have to connect. I think people are having superhero fatigue. It is a story, not all superheroes. We had the amazing success of Deadpool and Wolverine, which had some elements of comedy. That was truly a hit for Marvel. But there's so many films out there. I know, for example, Superman and Fantastic Four, the reviews were all right. There was no problems. They had some interesting stars. They were not bad films, but do we really need another version of Fantastic Four or another Superman? I personally don't think so. And you did ask me about Jurassic World.
Well, just because I know that you're such a fan, Fernanda, so I have to ask you. You're going to defend this film to the hilt.
I will. And you know what? people love dinosaurs. People love bloody dinosaurs. I mean, dinosaurs are special. So I think even a bad Jurassic World, yes, I am a fan, will do.
Even a bad and 7th Jurassic World film is still going to do it.
It's one of the most consistent franchises. And all I can think is it's actually one of the few films with a dinosaur in it. So we can't have actually dinosaur fatigue because they dominate that market for dinosaurs. Well, superheroes, we have Fantastic Four, whatever. You know, there's so many, I even forget the names. But for dinosaurs, there's only one.
They haven't even brought out yet like a TV series. We'll see what goes on with that. But we do want to broaden this out, Fernando, to some other countries because other things have been doing well outside of Hollywood. And you wanted to start with one, I don't really know what to make of this, but Demon Slayer in Japan.
Well, let's play a clip of the latest installment, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, and then maybe you'll change your mind, Chris.
I mean, we can't really do subtitles on radio, Fernando.
But you feel the vibe,
really
right?
Know what to make, but yes, there's a very frenetic vibe there. This is doing very well.
It's from the very popular anime series Demon Slayer, which is, I believe, about battling demons. You know, I'm not so, inside.
I think it might be about slaying demons. Actually,
yes, I think we should slay demons. You know, but what surprises me about this film? So, for example, it's been released only for 3 weeks. It's already in the top 10 films in Japan ever. And that's remarkable because the Japanese box office works different from the US one. In the US, it's all about the opening weekend. You know, people, they generally go, and you can judge a film by its first week. Not in Japan. They have this tradition of people who go weeks and weeks. So a film will be out for weeks, or months even. So you have to wait and see how the box office will do. So the numbers are impressive. It's being very front-loaded by the fans. And of course, will be released internationally. In the US, for example, on the 12th of September. So it's great news for the Japanese box office as well.
We'll see how that does in the United States as well. And then there was one other one you wanted to focus on from a whole other part of the world. We're heading to Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, and that's fascinating. That's from a country that ban cinemas till 2017. That's remarkable. So for 35 years, you couldn't actually go to the cinema in Saudi Arabia. So if you were Saudi, you had to go to a different country. But now a local film has been beating all the dinosaurs, all the superheroes. Great news for the local industry. The film that I'm talking is Al Zarfa, which I hope it does have an international release at some point. It's a heist comedy. So it's about 3 friends, and apparently they steal a treasure from a billionaire. And there's all sorts of confusions involved as well. But it looks fun. I did see some of the images of the film. But amazing news for the Saudi industry. And as I said, they literally banned cinemas till 2017. So it's remarkable that they are having films now topping the box office more than Jurassic World or Lilo and Stitch and many others.
We're going to have to wait for some of those to come out in the US or here in the UK. But finally, Fernando, do you like the summer box office? What are you keeping your eye on?
It's not a vintage year, I gotta be really honest. The numbers are not atrocious. We're definitely, the pandemic's behind us. In the box office way. I know we were talking about vaccines before. But there's some interesting hits. I'm very curious to watch a buzzy horror film that's going to be released this weekend.
You do like your horror.
I do like my horror.
About that.
It's called Weapons, about missing children, but there's some elements of comedy as well. And I think people are very much looking forward to that. Great reviews as well so far.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Monocle's senior correspondent, thank you very much for joining us. This is The Briefing. Finally, on today's show, it is time for our weekly summer series where we tap Monocle's editors and leading contributors to regale us with their summer recommendations, from seasonal dishes, engrossing beach reads, magical vacation spots, elevated fashion tips. And for this week's edition, Anita Ryota sat down with Monocle's luxury markets editor, Brenda Toohey, to see how she indulges in the summer. Anita started by asking her which accessories are her summer staple.
Well, I think summer is about unburdening, isn't it? It's about lightness, We're dressing in a lighter way. We're wearing less. We're freeing up our feet. We're putting on a sandal. I like nothing more than a Birkenstock.
I love a Birkenstock.
I love a Birkenstock. I really do. Summer, when it comes, whether it's in suede, leather, or those fabulous Birkenstock Arizonas, the PVC vegan ones that are just so light. It's like walking on air. Who doesn't love that? That's what summer says to me.
I love it. Okay, that was an unexpected first one, but you're keeping us, no pun intended, on our toes. Next, we're going into one of my favorite elements of the summer, warm weather in general, is dining outside with your friends, your family, al fresco dining. Tell me how we're elevating al fresco dining.
Well, the French do it pretty well. I was lucky enough to be in Paris recently, and I had dinner at Lulu at the Louvre, in the gardens of the Louvre. It's so exquisite and so simple. You know, they've just set up a marquee tent, it's a pretty big one, mind you, with wonderful white tablecloths just there in the gardens. It's so grand. It's so gorgeous. The food is quite fresh and simple, delicious pastas. I mean, just gorgeous. But, the sunshine and then the sunset. It's just gorgeous.
So are you basically in the Tuileries garden?
So beautiful. It's so wonderful. And in London, you can also dine at the wonderful Peninsula Hotel on the 8th floor. Claude Bossy, 2 Michelin stars. He has a pop-up called Soleil running until the end of this month. And you can sit up there, up in the heights, overlooking London. Nothing better. Delicious food, wonderful views. I love dining outside.
Amazing. You've transported us. Staying in the sort of outside world, what else can you tell us to do to enjoy being outside in the warmth, in the sun during the summer?
Well, if you're lucky enough to have a little patch of a garden, and I am that lucky woman, I love getting up in the morning and watering the garden. It just makes me feel good. Cup of coffee in my hand, a hose in the other. Oh, it just makes me feel divine. Looking at the blossoms, watching them grow, deadheading. It's wonderful. It works in the evening too, you know. It's divine.
And what are you growing these days?
I love a hydrangea. Geraniums, of course, are great for me because they're pretty hard to kill. So they're really good. You know, it's great to grow your own herbs. I have huge rosemary plants that I love to cut little pieces off and roast with some potatoes, you know, delicious. What else do I have? I have some digitalis. They're great. And I have some carnations. So lovely. And I have lots of big evergreen plants too.
I love that. So we have eaten outside. We've grown our own flowers. We've gotten some amazing shoes on. What else are we indulging in this summer?
I think that fragrance is important all year round, but especially in the summer. And my 2 favorite fragrances at the moment are Chanel No. 5 Low. So that's just a little bit lighter, as Low might suggest. It's a little bit more just lighter, easy summer fragrance, that classic Chanel No. 5. That's gorgeous. But have you heard? Monocle has a new scent. It's also our No. 5. It's called Syros. And it's just literally out now, just, you know, catching the last of the summer. Syros, patchouli, tobacco, peppery notes. It's warm. It's woody. It smells of sea air. It was inspired by the Eastern Mediterranean. And the nose that created this wonderful scent for Monocle is Antoine Maisondieu.
A stunning name and a stunning scent. I have smelled it, and I do think it's the perfect scent to transition, you know, August, September, from summer into fall. It has all those, the sea salt, but the smokiness. It's appropriate, I think, for this
wild
time
herbs.
of year. And then finally, let's really indulge. I have peeked at what you've brought in for us last, but we're ending strong. What's our final item?
I do like luxury. I do like a watch. A watch is important. I like to look down at my wrist and see something nice. And I think what's especially nice at the moment from Cartier is the Benoit watch. It's reminiscent, a little bit inspired by maybe Art Deco. You can have it in yellow gold. You can have it in white gold. You can have some diamonds thrown at it. It's gorgeous. You can have a bangle strap or leather, if that's your strap of choice.
What would you go for?
I think I'd go for the gold bangle. I like a watch as jewelry, so I'd go for the gold bangle. Mm-hmm. But it's super chic, quite simple in its aesthetic. This oval bezel, just super elegant and feminine.
Monocle's Brenda Tui there speaking with Anita Ryota. Thank you both for all of those tips. That's all for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Anita Ryota and Ryuma Takahashi. Our researcher was Henry King and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back on Monday at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye. Have a great weekend and thanks for listening.